What I'm about to discuss may offend some people. It may make some people angry. But we gonna discuss it because you know how we do on Psych Perspectives, GeoFlex channels, okay? We're gonna discuss how the federal minimum wage has literally gone up $6 in 6 decades. That's right. In the past 60 years, since 1963 to now, the federal minimum wage has gone up $6. You think I'm lying? I'm going to have some stuff or links and information in the description box, and you can also research it yourself. But in 1963, the federal minimum wage was $1.25 per hour federally. As of 2023, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 per hour. The last time the federal minimum wage has been increased was July 24th, 2009. The reason why I picked 1963 is because that is the year my granny graduated high school. She graduated high school 60 years ago. And when she was 18, the federal minimum wage was $1.25 per hour. You gotta ask yourself, why 60 years later you've only gone up $6, yet the cost of living, inflation, price gouging has gone up tremendously, skyrocketed. And arguably one of the reasons why so many of us are struggling to make ends meet, working 2 and 3 jobs to still go without, living paycheck to paycheck in a constant, never-ending struggle, is because our wages and salaries do not reflect the cost of living. And every time this is brought up, we're constantly being met with, well, you got to try harder. You're not working hard enough. Well, maybe you should get a 4th or 5th job because we already are working 2 and 3 jobs, Maybe you should get a 2nd or 3rd part-time job. Since you already have a part-time job, maybe you should get a 2nd or 3rd side hustle. Since you're already working multiple jobs, have a part-time and a side hustle. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe you should sell more plasma, because that's another thing. Every time you turn around, there are different plasma centers popping up all over the place, encouraging you to donate your blood for cash. And a lot of people are donating their blood, not necessarily because, it's the good thing to do to help other people. Some of us do that to help other people, but it's also about survival because people are literally having to sell their blood to get some extra cash to pay a bill, to get gas in their tank, to put food on the table. Welcome to late stage capitalism. All right? It's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. And people deserve more than what they're getting. It is just, all of us arguably should be making 30% more than what we're being paid. So now that I've gotten that out the way and we've talked about that, let me bring up some facts, okay? So in 1963, and I'm just going to bring up some stuff because people are always like, what do you mean? I can't believe this. Oh my God. Yeah, so in 1963, the federal minimum wage, right? Because I want y'all to understand. There you go. It was $1.25. If you inflate that 1963 $1.25 and you have an inflation of today in 2023, that $1.25 today would mean that the federal minimum wage, arguably, from 1963 to now, it would have been $10.81. That would be the adjusted value of the minimum wage. Okay? All right? So essentially, in 1963, if you were making $1.25 minimum wage, you had the buying power to do a lot of things. So let's talk about that. The buying power of $1.25 per hour in 1963. Because I think, again, a lot of y'all think I just be getting on here to rant and rave about shit. And yeah, a lot of times that is what I'm doing, but for good reason. You know what I'm saying? Because this is affecting us all. So, essentially, I just showed you that essentially your buying power was $10.81 an hour in 1963 when it was $1.25 an hour federally minimum wage. A lot of people argue that it can be anywhere between $9.83 to so it could be anywhere from $9.83 to $12, give or take a few. It just depends on how you look at it. But you had the buying power of $10 an hour at $1.25. That's 60 years ago. Okay, remember this, right? Because they're always talking about, minimum wage. That's not meant for you to live your life on. That's for kids. That's for teenagers. Go get a real job. Meanwhile, 60 years ago, a person could be working a minimum wage job, okay, a McDonald's, okay, a fast food place, at the grocery store, etc., and be able to take care of themselves, their family, which could have been 2 or 3 kids, a wife, a husband, a significant other, a partner. You'd get the point. Own a house, have a car, have a savings. They were living pretty decently on that minimum wage 60 years ago. So when people are constantly arguing about, get a real job and it's not meant for you to live on and blah, blah, blah. Yes, the hell it is. Okay. And I'm going to bring it up because people are always arguing. So why do we have a minimum wage? Why do we have a federal minimum wage? Well, let's look at EPI, which is a really good website, the Economic Policy Institute. I really appreciate them. You can also go to the U.S. Department of Labor, us.gov, Center for American Progress, the International Labor Organization. The point is, you can go to various places to get this information. So let's look at the history, right? 85 years later, because that's when the first minimum wage was implemented in the USA. So the minimum wage is a part of a New Deal era policy established initially through the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, okay, FLSA. New Deal, who was the president then? Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR. Arguably was one of the more decent presidents we've had historically. But anyways, the original bill set a wage floor instituted at a 44-hour work week because it used to be well over 40 hours, right? But okay, at a 44-hour work week, and protected children from prematurely entering the workforce. Since its inception, the FLSA, the Federal Labor Standards Act, has been amended multiple times with added exemptions and expansions, specifying which groups of workers are covered under different aspects of the law. The latest proposed changes in Congress, the Raise the Wage Act of 2023, would increase the federal minimum wage to $17 per hour. This is an actual act that's sitting And it's probably not going to pass because of the people that we keep electing who really don't give a rat's ass about everyday people, aka you and me, the taxpayers, the workers, the laborers, okay? But anyways, so the concept behind, okay, the the Fair Labor Standards Act began in the 1930s as a response to the Great Depression. Okay, this is when about 25% of the workers in this country, in the USA, were unemployed. People lost their life savings due to bank failures, and many struggled to secure housing and food. Oh my gosh, sounds really familiar. Okay, I'm just being real. You know what I'm saying? I'm just being real. So, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President Franklin Delano FDR Roosevelt, administration sought to revive the economy and help the nation recover by instituting industry-wide fair competition codes intended to set wages, prices, create jobs, and permit collective bargaining. From the NRA, which was the National Industrial Recovery Act, and establishing the National Recovery Administration, over 2 million businesses sought to earn pro-worker Blue Eagle branding by signing agreements back then, in the 1930s, for policies such as a weekly $12 to $15 minimum wage, a commitment not to hire workers younger than 16, and a work week no longer than 40 hours. All right. So the whole point is that the minimum wage is supposed to be the minimum needed for a person to live a quality life. Okay? A standard life. It was implemented in the 1930s under President Roosevelt and his administration. So when people sit up and tell you that it's not meant for people to live on, that's bullshit, and it's incorrect, and it's false. It's not true. It is intended for people to live a standard quality of life. So when people sit up here and tell you that, well, get a real job, they have a real job. Nobody working should have to live in poverty. Nobody working should have to sit up and live check to check. Nobody working a full-time job should have to be worried about how they're going to pay their bills, how they're going to keep a roof over their head, how they're going to put food on the table, how they're going to buy clothes for their kids. Okay, and when you look at it, this is like one of the longest gaps since the federal minimum wage has been increased, right? Because if you look, it got increased in 1938, 1939, okay? 1938, it was 25 cents an hour. So you mean to tell me from 1938 to 2003, it's only gone up $7? You can't make this shit up. And everybody wants to sit up here and look at us, millennials and Gen Zers. Oh, it's your fault. You need to work harder. You're not trying harder. You need to save. Don't buy that avocado toast. That's why you can't buy a house and start a family. And that's why you're in debt. Really. But here's the thing. 25 cents in 1938 per hour had the buying power of $4.74. And that's what people don't understand. The point is, you were able to live and flourish on minimum wage. Okay, so what I mean by this has been like one of the longest. So in 1945, when my grandmother was born, they had an increase. It went up to it went to 40 cents per hour. And it went up again in 56 and 61 and 63. My granny graduated high school in 63. It was $1.25. If you look at today's value, that would be $10.81. They were basically they had the buying power of $10.81 per hour. So let's look at what the typical cost of things were in 1963, right? Remember, you're not supposed to be able to live on that. Go get a real job. Pay attention. This is what's going to get you. Average cost of gas in 1963. In 1963, the average cost of gas was literally 30 cents a gallon. Remember, you had the buying power of $10.84 at $1.25 per hour minimum wage in 1963. So a person could literally fill up their tank, go all over the damn place, and still have wads of cash. Okay? Average cost of a car in 1963. The average cost of a car was $3,000, guys, girls, folks, people. It was $3,233. That was the average cost of a car, okay? And what was so crazy about it was the new car cost less than the used car. Which is kind of what we're seeing now, if we're being honest. But here goes some other prices, right? You wanted to get you a fountain pop. You wanted a Coca-Cola. It was 5 cents. You wanted a hamburger, a McDonald's, a Big Mac. It was 28 cents. You wanted to get a new washer or a dryer. $313. It was still, You wanted a refrigerator. $500. You wanted gas. Again, 32 cents. Average income per year back then in 1963 was about $4,396 a year. But you got to remember, I'm gonna bring it back. I'm gonna take the CPI, okay, the Consumer Price Index. All this information is in the description box below. Because people are always asking, like, why do you have all of this, blah, blah, blah? Because I literally went to school and studied social sciences, history, politics, economics, sociology. Okay, so it's a lot of stuff like this. This is what I do. This is what I do. This is what I went to school for. CPI calculator. So let's look at that. So, okay. 1963. Boop, boop, boop. Remember, they said that the average salary was $4,396 in 1963, right? You had the buying power of $44,000 in 1963 at $4,396. So again, it was very easy to spend $313 on a washer and dryer when you're making that type of money. It was very easy for you to buy a house. Oh, let's look at that. Average cost of a house in 1963. Oh my gosh. The median was about $18,000, which if you adjusted that for inflation, that's $176,000 plus today. That's how much the house would have been worth. But you had the buying power of 44 and it was 18. You could literally buy your house and pay that bitch off. And theoretically, you could have. Which, back in the day, there used to be, well, you can still do this in some cases, but there used to be 10-year mortgages, 10-year term rate mortgages, 15 rate mortgages, which made sense when you were making that much money. Your wages and salaries actually reflected the cost of living. Now, keep in mind, this is a very privileged look because obviously 1963, if you're a person of color, you're black, you're Hispanic, you're Latino, you're African American, etc., you're a woman, you didn't really have the same benefits as a white cisgendered heterosexual male. Let's just keep it real. We still don't. Arguably, let's just keep it real. But don't you think that's odd? Like, what? You could do all of that? Average cost of college tuition in 1963. This is also about to piss you off. Child, a 4-year public institution back then was $243 for the year, your tuition. And remember, this is why back then a person could literally work the summer and pay their tuition. Can we do that? Hell no. You basically need to be making $10K a month. Shit, 15, 20K a month. But somehow it's our fault that we don't have income and we can't buy houses and we can't start families and we're always in debt and we're living check to check. So I just want people to know this so we can all stop being gaslit by the government, by society, and by older generations who literally had it easier economically, financially. Okay? And you all know the generation that I'm talking about. And again, don't get me wrong. Are there baby boomers who struggled and suffered and still are struggling and suffering? Yes. But if we're looking at them as a collective generation, they had a far easier time financially and economically than any other generation. Okay, because Gen X got screwed over, millennials have been screwed over, Gen Z has been screwed over, and sadly, looking at the trajectory, Gen Alpha will be screwed over too. Because, hello, if your millennial parents are struggling and can barely make ends meet, they're not really going to be able to give you a proper foundation so you can live well. Okay, I'm just being real. Like, nobody's looking at this. And then everyone's just being blamed for not having kids. Meanwhile, you can barely afford to fill your fucking tank up. Anyways, I cussed. I'm going to end this. I need to get in the shower. I got to pick up a friend. I'm out.